So what I just did, I turned on a recording for this session. I know that it was a little hard to get this scheduled and get the links to distribute as they should have and all that. So if at any stage you do wish to talk and you feel uncomfortable doing so while the session is being recorded, just let me know and I will then step out so outside of the recording and we'll be able to address it, so that if you have questions that you want to keep private, you should be at this time seeing also a screen of mine that just simply welcomes you onto this review session, and I'll use that to navigate through much of the material, but I'll also share other screens of mine throughout the session. I try to monitor the chat if you have questions, if you have comments, but if I miss those, please do not hesitate to just unmute yourself and let me know. I'll try to keep an eye on that, but I'm not always the best one on that. So here's what I had planned for us to do today. We're gonna be simply really quickly, I want to introduce who I am, what's the plan for the session, talk a little bit about what are the expectations on a weekly level for this course, then talk about these meetings that I have offered as an optional resource, and review the course really just kind of on a broad strokes of what to expect. I want to spend a little bit of time today also talking about the syllabus and mentioning our disability resources services and how I approach teaching. But the bulk of what I want us to spend time is to tackle any questions that you might have. And if you don't have questions, then to tackle reviewing the chapter material and especially the homework so that you're all set for success for this class. Obviously, I would love for these sessions to be as interactive as possible. I know we're still kind of finding our feet in terms of scheduling these and making sure that as many people as possible are able to join those. I never want you to change your schedules, change your plans. These are asynchronous courses that we're offering, so there is no requirement for you to be present at one time at one place. This is just an additional resource that I want to offer. But more you're able to tell me what you need from me, the easier it is for me to help you then again. Let me just see if I'm able to move this window a little bit. I think that we're in a better place if I'm able to move few things around. That seems better at this. So if you are able to, I do see your names on the chat. I appreciate both of you, Christina and Olivia, for joining today. If you have another name that you wish me to use, please let me know and I'll try to honor that. But I look forward to working with you this semester. I look forward to getting to know you better, also getting to know what goals you have, what you might want to get out of this course. This course, BIO201, is a course that I've been teaching for quite a while at other institutions. It's been a while since I taught it online, but about less than 2 weeks before our course started, I was asked to jump in and cover for this course, and I'm very, very happy to do that. I'm familiar with the course, I'm familiar with the material, but as you'll see, I'm also open to changing the running of the course. If at any stage you feel, for example, that the material isn't balanced, requirements aren't balanced, I'm open to edit this, since this was a kind of a late build course for me as well. If you feel comfortable, feel free to unmute yourself if you have a specific career goals or specific goals that you're looking to get out of this course. If you do not feel comfortable, don't feel pressured to do so, but that always helps me if I know where do we draw the examples from.
So I'm Christina. I'm
Hi,
taking
Christine.
this class so I can do my prerequisites for nursing school. I've been in the medical field for the past 13 years, and hopefully this is my last license I plan to get. I have four of them already.
That's fantastic, Christina. I'm so excited to have you on this class. I know a lot of my students do these courses as a prereq for nursing. So you are exactly the type of students I normally teach. Will make sure that you reach your goals and you do so without having to stress too much about this course as well. One of the beauties of I think that these asynchronous online courses is that you can fit it around your busy schedule. My only advice would be that try to stay on top of the workload. Those points add up quickly. So I'm super excited to have you on this field, and I'm super excited whenever you feel comfortable, please feel free to share about your vast experience on the field.
Okay, definitely. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, if later on you want to introduce yourself, Olivia, jump in, feel free to do so, but I'm not going to put you on the spot if you don't feel comfortable doing so just yet. Um, just a few words, because I know that you're not really here to learn about me, but I think it helps always when you know who you're working with for the semester. Obviously, with a name like mine, I'm not a native to Arizona. So I was born and raised in northern Scandinavia. I just go by Sam. I've been in this medical field for quite a while. That's okay, Olivia. Don't worry if the audio isn't working. We'll get to catch up a little later. But I've been working in medical field in various different roles, various different careers for quite a while, and I've been teaching future nurses, radiographers, dental technicians, dental hygienists, uh, allied health in general, pre-meds for quite a while. Um, I am based here in the Channel Gilbert. I do have an office, but since we are an online course, I offer all of my office hours also remotely, so feel free to just join to those. I know, like I said, that this course landed on my table a little bit at the last minute, so I'm still trying to figure out that we get all of the links to the office hours to populate on your calendar. If you ever need to get hold of me, the Canvas messages is the best way, and we will figure out a time that best works for you. Um, really quickly about my background. My background is really largely on medical imaging side of the things. I've done a lot of clinical research in cardiac MRI imaging. Traditionally, we see, as we see on this picture that I'm sharing on the bottom right corner, traditionally we're able to tell from MRI scan of a heart if there's dead tissue and deal with that as needed for revascularization or so on. But the research group that I've been working with and research that I've focused on is looking at actually an interesting tissue change. Before there's tissue damage that's irreversible, what happens is that if there's a shortage of supply of nutrients, oxygen, there's actually water from inside the cell moves to the outside the cell in cardiac muscle tissue, and it shows up as something that we can imagine as a area at risk, so indicating about the potential tissue death. So we can estimate how much damage has already happened and how much damage might happen, and then make judgments on based on that how much of a medical intervention is needed. So those new novel imaging methods that my group has been working on are shown on the pictures at the very top on the screen. That's obviously not in the exam, but that's my background, that's my interest. But I didn't always do this job. Actually, my proper first career in medicine, in sciences, I guess I should say, was as a conservator restorer, so working with archaeological objects, museum objects, working on excavation sites. And during that time, I ended up working with a lot of objects that were attached or closely connected to human cadavers that were found on these excavation sites. So preserving those. During that time, I did realize that probably if I'm dealing with human bodies, I should probably go back to school and learn a little bit about that field. And that's exactly what I did. I went and did my undergrad and postgrad in human anatomy. Pretty soon, I did realize, though, especially when we're working with mummified corpses, that you can't just unwrap a body and have a peek inside and wrap it again. It's no longer the same thing. So I saw a need that I probably should learn a little bit about medical imaging field, and that's how I ended up on that field, doing medical imaging research as well, like I shared at the very beginning, as part of my time working in anatomy. And in that field, I also ended up working quite closely with the forensic field, looking at whether the human remains that we were finding were honestly archaeological or whether they were newer and as such required some forensic work to ensure that there's no foul play in that sense. However, my background does extend to other medical imaging modalities such as ultrasound. When I moved to America, I taught ultrasound in a private medical imaging school here in Phoenix for a while. I've done also a lot of basic medical research using cell lines and so on. During that time, I worked at the private schools, and I had a little bit of an uneasy feeling about that maybe not everyone here had an equal access to education, and I ended up covering a couple of classes for friends who needed a sub at the community college, and I realized that community colleges might be really the answer for equalizing the playing field, in a sense that everyone who wants to have an education in a medical field has an access to that. So I really fell in love with what community colleges are and what they stand for, and I've been on this sphere since then. I worked for quite a few institutions. I still do. Like I said, I hold my main full-time professorship here in Chandler Gilbert, but I teach these classes at various community colleges, various universities. So you're getting the same product, just customized slightly different at all of these places. And in true honesty, at the community college, you're getting it at the most affordable and best value rate. Currently, I am continuing my studies. I'm very interested in medical, legal, and ethical issues, and I pursue my second doctorate on that field at the moment. So I think that good teachers should be also always learning. So I hear your pain if you're saying there's a lot of coursework. I completely understand it, and I will try to make it as doable and as manageable as possible for you, as possible for this course. But at the same time, we want to make sure that we cover all of the material that we need to cover. If I was a student, I guess that what I'd be interested would be that what's expected from me. I realize that this is an 8-week accelerated class, so we're working at the twice of the speed of a traditional 201 class. So that does add up a little bit more to the speed that we're going through materials. So what I'm looking on this course is that you complete your homeworks and you complete your tests. And those points are cumulative. There's no cumulative final exam. It's 3 exams, 3 practicals, and for every chapter, typically I have a quiz and practice anatomy. Sometimes I have additional assignments, but what I wanted to say as the very first thing is that this week is a little different, and I think that both of you already have done it. I appreciate you doing so, but for anyone who's watching and might not have done so, I ask you to complete the syllabus quiz by the end of the day. And the reason is kind of twofold. First of all, I want to know that you've had a chance to look at the syllabus and you feel comfortable with it, but also so that we can make a note as a college that you are actively participating on this course. Because if we don't hear anything from you, it's for your best interest that you get dropped from the class so you don't end up accumulating a student debt for the entire class if you're not attending. If for some reason you were to be dropped from the class, I'm always happy to add students back. So just let me know, but I would ask that all students on this class complete the syllabus quiz by the end of today. Like I already mentioned, each week we typically cover 2 learning modules, and each learning module typically has 1 chapter that we cover, and each chapter has a quiz and practice anatomy. And we'll have a look at what that quiz and practice anatomy means. Occasionally, I have added other additional activities to weekly assignments. Some of these are called typically food for thought. They're kind of more applying questions and application-based questions on the themes that we're talking about, some quirky concepts. So in a typical week, I would expect you to do normally 2 quizzes and 2 practice anatomy activities, but that might change a little bit depending on what's lined up for each week. Like I mentioned, we also will have 3 exams and 3 practicals, and the content that you will see in an exam is going to be completely from those quizzes, or very closely from those quizzes that you complete weekly. So it's word of kind of doing those. That's your preparation, that's your study guide for the exam. And same goes for the practical. Practical really is applying the material. I see, Christina, thank you. Please do let me know if I keep missing questions. I saw that there was a question about whether the exam is also open book, and I have to be a little careful how I phrase this answer. So let's try, and if it doesn't make sense, ask me again. So since this is an asynchronous online course, I'm a big believer that what's important for me is that you go through the material in a sense that you know where to find the answers. So by that, I'm saying that I do not use proctoring for an exam or for a practical. So you can use your notes, you can use your textbook, you can take it wherever you wish. I do not want to have a screen browser lockdown. I do not wish to have a recording of you taking the exam. However, there is a time limit to the exam and to the practical. And the time limit, it means that you're not going to run out of time. It's not going to be a stressful experience. Typically, it's about 1 minute per question. And typically, questions are literally multiple choice or very simple, very quick to answer. I would say that an average student takes about 5 seconds per question. So you will not run out of time. However, the time limit is there for the purposes that if it's the first time that you ever open a textbook, or it's the first time that you ever start looking at the pictures that could come up in the practical, that's probably not going to gain you full marks in an exam or practical. So I want you to know where at least to go to find the answers and not start full study for the first time during those sessions. But the short answer to your question is that yes, it's all open book. It's not something to stress, and I'm glad that that makes sense. You can see that I'm dancing around the topic a little bit. There are different views in the college. There are views that we should require proctoring, and I'm going to say this as gently as I can. Since I spend a lot of time on the law sphere, I do have some concerns whether that's the right way for us to go. So I think that I can see that you're producing your own work without having to do a proctored setting. So I'm glad that that made sense. Other things that I wanted to mention real quickly before we start looking at the chapter material and homework material, I don't require to attend by any means on these optional live online sessions, but I think it's nice for students to know that there is a chance for direct, immediate interaction, but this is not the only time that you can have that. I'm always available virtually during my office hours. If there's reasons why I'm not, I will let you know, and I'm also happy to schedule one-on-one sessions outside those office hours. I did do a little bit of a discussion forum activity asking you to indicate when you're available, and I realized that it's hard to schedule a time when everyone is available. Um, I'll address that question in a second, Olivia. But I think that where I've landed is that we'll meet once every week on Wednesday from 1 to 2, and I offer the same session again on Thursday evening from 8 to 9. I don't want to put these sessions too late into the week in case there's material that helps you with the weekly assignments. And like I said, I will record these sessions. So I think that let me just make sure that I'm reading correctly the question that came up on the chat. The question that I'm seeing is that are the PowerPoint slides an alternative to reading the chapters in the textbook? My answer would be that your textbook is the number one to go to place. So your textbook will provide all the answers to all of the quizzes and practice anatomy questions. I provide those PowerPoints as a source that might help you if you don't have time to read the textbook. Remember also when you're completing quizzes, you can have textbook on the side, and actually the quiz, and we'll have a look at that in a second, when you're completing a quiz, it will link directly to that section of the textbook where the answer is available if you're struggling to come up with the right answer. So I would say that textbook is the priority. I offer the PowerPoints, and I also offer these pre-recorded lecture videos of the material that relates to each chapter, but those are more of a supplementary resource. I don't mean to sound harsh, and obviously there's individual differences. I would say that if you're only going to watch the recorded lecture videos and not do anything else, you're probably looking at getting a C or a B. For that A grade, you really should spend some time interacting with that textbook. So textbook is what I prioritize. Everything else is supplementary to that. But remember as well, having said that, that to get an A on this class, you only need to get 91% of all of the points available. So it's not that you need to have 100% for every single activity that exists. You just need to collect 91% of those points. I hope that that answered to the question. I sometimes have a bad habit of kind of going around the question. So hopefully that makes sense. And don't hesitate to shoot me another message if you want a clarification. Really quickly, I wanted to mention an overview. Oh, I'm glad that that made sense. I wanted to give you an overview what's coming up. I should learn to write before I do these slides. What's coming up this semester? So I've divided this semester into 3 different sections. On the first week or couple of weeks, really the first week, we'll spend time looking at the chapter 1, which is really key terminology, having a kind of an overview of body systems, some body regions, different kinds of movements. We'll also visit a theme like homeostasis. So really basic stuff. And the chapter, I believe it's chapter 5, but I might be mistaken, on your textbook covers also tissues. The chapter on tissues should be reviewed from what you've already covered at the prereq classes for this course. So there should not be new material. And then in the coming weeks, we will go through typically one system or one chapter per week. So we'll have a look of the skin and associated structures. We'll talk a little bit about bone tissue in general, cartilages. Then we'll take an exam that covers that material, also practical that covers that material. And then we'll move on fully to review skeleton, one bone at a time. And it's not going to be enough that we just know the bones. We also want to know the major bumps, major markings on the bones. We'll spend a little bit of time looking at also different kinds of joints, so articulations between the bones. We'll talk about muscle tissue in general before we move on to talk, review the key main skeletal muscles that form the big buildup of the body. Again, after that, we'll take an exam, kind of wrap up those topics and practical, and move on to the final third biggest of a section that we'll do as part of this course, which is really to look at the nervous system. We'll talk about neurons in general. We'll talk about central nervous system, so brain, spinal cord. We'll talk about peripheral nervous system, autonomic nervous system, and various different senses. And then we'll wrap up the semester by taking an exam of those chapters. Really, like I said, there's no cumulative final exam, and all of the exams are open book. So I really strongly recommend spending that time and putting that energy in figuring out the material on the quizzes, because that's what's on the exam. Really quickly, I wanted to show you few highlights of the syllabus. You are spending time going through the syllabus, or you probably have spent time going through the syllabus. Let me just see that I can share my screen with you. And you should see this courses view, and you can access the syllabus from Concourse syllabus view. So like I said, this is completely asynchronous course. We do proceed though on a weekly pattern. So I'm asking you to complete assignments for each week. These assignments for each week have a deadline set at the end of that week. So I'm asking you to submit those by 1 minute before the midnight at the end of the Sunday. If for some reason you need extra time, I'm always happy to extend those due dates. But I really encourage you to try to keep up with that homework pattern, because otherwise it might become a lot to stay on top of. In addition, like I said, we do have these optional sessions, but they are not required. Um, I am expecting a weekly participation on this course. By what I mean with that is that if you completely disappear from the map, I don't hear from you, I don't see any assignments coming in, then the college does require me to drop you from the class. I'll probably reach out to you ahead of that, but just don't do a runner. If you're having to take time off during the next 8 weeks, you know you have travels or something, try to work ahead of the material. So you're not missing submission due dates. In terms of what's the best way to get hold of me, I do ask you to use Canvas, because I receive so many emails, and on the Canvas you can see you all have an inbox there, and when you click onto the inbox, that opens you a messaging option, sending me messages there. Those are the ones that I answer quickest. If you send me an email, I will answer to that, but sometimes I get a lot of emails, about 200 a day, so I might miss your message. If you don't hear back from me within a day or two, just resend the message. I will get back to you. It is possible that sometimes things slide through the cracks, but don't hesitate just to keep reminding me until you get that answer. Like I said, I do offer office hours on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays from 1 to 3 virtually through the WebEx, and they should be appearing on your calendar those times, or you should be able to access them through the link from the Cisco WebEx, but we'll make sure that if there's any issues, that gets rectified. If you want to meet in person, I am from Monday to Thursday around on both campuses at the Chandler Gilbert. I'm happy to make the time, or I'm happy to make the time and date another time if you want to meet also virtually. I'm not going to go through the course competencies. We've kind of had a look of those. Your textbook is available for you automatically once you've enrolled to this course. So you automatically have an access to electronic version of the textbook. I do ask you to make sure that you have some sort of a computer access to internet. Sometimes students try to take these courses on a mobile phone, and it can be done, but sometimes in the exams, in the practicals, in the homework quizzes, that might get a little bit tricky to run it on a small screen. If you need a computer, you don't have one available, we do lend those out from the library. So I would reach out to those. If you run into dead ends, let me know and I'll try to help you. Like I said, at this point, I am not using Lockdown Browser. If we do end up with a systemic issue of cheating, then we might revisit that question. There's all kinds of assignments that I'm asking you to do, but really for your grade, the biggest thing is that do the syllabus quiz that's due this week. Do each week for each chapter the quiz and practice anatomy. Occasionally there might be food for thought questions. These are kind of additional, a little bit more applied questions, and make sure that you don't miss practicals or exams. Like I said, I'm very flexible in terms of giving extensions on the assignments, but practicals and exams, I'm a little bit less flexible. So I ask you to please, please, please try to get those done based on the due dates that have been listed for them. I also have a few feedback questionnaires that I'll be presenting for you at different stages of the semester, but I'm always open for feedback, and I'm always open to change things around so that this course best serves you as possible. There is a caveat, that is that I might do changes if something looks like that, if there's class needs that indicate otherwise. So I leave that option there. I've also shown you there the number of different assignments, number of points that are associated with them, and the point number that it adds up in total. Again, changes are possible, but this gives you a rough idea how the points accumulate. And like I said, you just need to get that 90 or 91% of all the points to get an A. B 80 to 89, C 70 to 79. Anything below that, unfortunately, is not going to be a passing grade. If at any point your grade isn't where you want it to be, and you really need that that particular grade, I'm happy to give you extra assignments. There was a question on the chat whether the assignments are weighted differently. Not really. It's based on these point values that I've allocated to them. So you'll see that there's a lot of points available on exams and practicals. Those are really assignments that I wouldn't want to miss. However, if there's an assignment that's worth of 5 points, 5 points out of 641 is not going to end your life if you miss out on those. So be a little strategic if you're pushed for time or resources, that where the points lie. But there is no other weighing than the point values that I put up there. I hope that answered the question. I sometimes do misunderstand. So let me know if that doesn't make sense. I think that I'm very straightforward, and all of the assignments are open already now on day one, or we're open on day one, so you can work ahead of the time, Perfect. I'm glad that that makes sense. So if you need to work ahead, feel free to do so. If you want to re-attempt something and the system wouldn't allow you to, I normally try to set everything that you have unlimited attempts. If for some reason you weren't able to resubmit, just reach out to me, drop me a message, and I will totally reset so that you can try anything and everything as many times as possible, with the exception on the exams and practicals. Like I said, I need you to attend once a week. And we have certain standards that the college applies to us and requires us to hold. So there's a few sections on that. I've provided you a course calendar that gives you quite a nice idea of what's due each week. And when you're working through this course calendar, please notice that I have 2 modules typically per week. Only exception is week 2, when I only have 1 module. But I typically have 2 modules per week, so I'm asking you to complete both. This week we're doing both Chapter 1 and Chapter 5. Both of them have a due date at the end of the Sunday, because I want to make sure that I realize and I appreciate that we have sometimes students who work full-time, for example, during the working week, and weekends are when they really knock out the material. I would, of course, try to ask you not to leave things at the last minute, so you're not scrambling to get through them, but I understand that life happens. If you need extensions, let me know and we'll figure it out. Notice also that there's not a separate week when we take tests. Tests are grouped to those weeks mistakes when you're doing normal studying as well. So tests shouldn't be a scary or a big thing. It's basically asking similar stuff that you've already seen in the quizzes. There's no curveballs. There's no new material. Same goes for the practicals. You've already seen those pictures on your practice anatomy. So try to make sure that you get those done. And you'll see that on the week 8, I do want to make sure that you're aware of that we'll finish that week earlier on. So I'm asking for the quiz. There's no practical for the couple of last chapters. I'm asking for the quiz to be submitted on week 8 by Wednesday, and then the tests by Thursday. This is because the semester ends on Thursday the 20th, so we don't have the luxury of spending that rest of the week. I also need to get your grades to the registry so you get them on your transcripts as quickly as possible. That is all I wanted to say about the syllabus, and I'm really quickly gonna jump back to the little PowerPoint that I had before I want to show a few other things. Really, most of the work that you will be doing is done within the Connect. Connect is automatically linked for those quizzes and practice anatomy activities to your Canvas. So you just click that assignment and it will automatically throw you there and update your grade then to the grade book on Canvas. That is where you access also your electronic textbook. Like I said, I would prefer if you can message me through the Canvas. Really quickly, I want to mention a couple of words about the Disability Resources Services. I think that the big thing that I want to communicate here is that if you have something that you think that impacts your ability to succeed on this course, it might be that you have disabilities, it might be that you've had a plan in the past at the high school or somewhere else. We want to make sure that every student has a chance to excel in these classes, and every student has a chance to succeed to the very best of their abilities. So if you have a documented disability, we will certainly work with you. I will never find out personally what it is that you've got going on. You will work with our Disability Resources Services Office, and they will assess what would be reasonable changes that we do to the course. Typically, they include things like additional time on timed assignments or exams. It might include extensions on the due dates. It might include translators. It might include scribe that you have available. So we want to make sure that you have a chance to succeed. And I want to personally use myself as an example and say that not all disabilities are visible. I have a dyslexia and I never realized it until as an adult, and it was never documented. So writing English essays, doing spelling exams probably wasn't my jam, and I probably lost a fair bit of points because of that. Literally letters keep moving back and forth in front of my eyes. But had I known that, had I sought for support from disability services, probably would have been a good idea. So I encourage you to consider if that's something that could help you. My commitment to all of the students in my classes is that if you have a goal, if you need a certain grade, if you need to learn certain materials, I will work with you to ensure that you meet those goals. Obviously, you'll have to put in effort as well, but as much effort as you're willing to put in, I will put in as well. I wanted to check at this time whether you have any questions that you might, oh, I don't know what I did there. Let's see. Any questions that you might have for me? I really appreciate that you've been chatting. I'm just scrolling through. Is there anything else that I missed? So like I said, my philosophy is to try to make these courses very low stress. I don't want you to be stressed beyond it being pleasant. I think students learn better when they're relaxed and they're not stressed out. If you have questions, feel free to just unmute yourself or drop into the chat. But if I don't get any, what I'm going to do, I'm going to try to make this time worthwhile. And I'm going to share my screen once more. And I'm going to show what I'm looking for this week. So for this week, and let's go to the student view. And my view looks a little different sometimes, but it should look fairly similar to what you're seeing. So for this week, I'm asking you to do the syllabus quiz. I'm also providing a lot of materials to assist you. Like I've said, I've been teaching these courses for a long time, so I have a lot of material, but your textbook is the primary source of material that I would ask you to study. I'm asking you to complete a quiz on chapter 1 and chapter 1 practice anatomy, and I'm asking you to do the same for the second module that we have for this week, labeled as 1B for the tissues. There's less materials because it's largely revision, and again, I'm asking you to do the quiz and practice anatomy for that. What I thought that would be kind of fun and worthwhile for you, since you're here and or you're watching this recording, is that if we have a look what to expect on the quizzes, what might come up. That way, let me just make sure that I'm sharing the right things. That way you have a chance also kind of from benefiting from joining to this session. So let me just share a screen again. So the first quiz is made of 9 questions and is worth of 10 points in total. We'll have a look at those questions. So the first question asks you to draw the differences between anatomy and physiology. You know that anatomy, if you do the reading, is a study of form, so study of structures, whereas physiology is study of functions, so how things work. So there's a structure and function are connected to each other. You normally can't understand one without understanding another, but in A&P we do this definition. Typically, for example, describing the structure of an organ, such as here of the what kidney is made of, would be anatomy. Same goes for here as an example of the heart, how heart is made of 4 different chambers. So it's really describing the structure of organ. Here we're seeing from the nervous system, we're talking about brachial artery, or for the cardiovascular system, we're talking about brachial artery, how different arteries contribute to forming that structure. In a nervous system, we're seeing brain, how it's made of different hemispheres, and so on. And we can also see anatomy on a microscopic scale, such as looking on a cell level, what cell is made. So all of those would be examples of anatomy, whereas in the physiology, if we look at the examples that we have here, we're seeing how things work. So cells work by needing to produce ATP, which then drives all the cellular processes. Skeletal muscles, the muscles that we'll be looking at that form the big muscles of the body, they create movements. And this movement is actually created on a cellular level or on a microscopic level by sliding filaments that slide past each other. And you'll learn all about that once we get to that chapter. But you'll see that that's again physiology, that's how things work. Glucose is necessarily for fueling processes in the body, such as brain, heart cells. We can talk about how heart cells work. Notice that it's all about how things are working, not about what they are made of. We can also see kind of larger, almost like whole body system level physiology, how acid-base balance is important in the body, and kidneys contribute to that. So that would be an example of a question that might come up to you. Similarly, I do spend time on the week 1 talking about homeostasis, which is a method of providing consistent internal environment. You'll learn all about that. Again, I'm not expecting you to know answers to the quizzes from the top of your head. As you read the textbook, as you watch the videos, you'll learn all about it. But we'll see that homeostasis typically works through negative feedback. So by negative feedback, I mean that when there's a change happening in the body, we detect it, we process it on a kind of a central processing level, which typically refers to your brain, compare it to what things should be normal, and then act on that. That action is that we typically try to stop changes from happening. We don't want your body temperature, for example, to get too cold or too hot. We want to keep it between that sweet spot. So if we start to go too hot or too cold, the negative feedback brings the change back to the normal. That's what I'm meaning there. We're reversing a change, reversing a trend. And then I've got some examples of negative feedback. Really, there's only 3 times in life in human body when we see positive feedback happening. In positive feedback, what we're seeing is that we're deviating from that normal. Let's say that this is the normal range, and we're moving out of there. And rather than stopping that change from happening and bringing us back to the normal in positive feedback, that change is happening, and body detects that and decides to make it even bigger of a change. So this is typically seen in 3 events during childbirth. So we're talking about the cervix being stretched there, during blood clot or a scab formation, and also during the expelling milk from the breast tissue as the baby suckles the nipple. That brings up the milk to the surface, and as a result, baby suckles more to the nipple. So it's like an additive process. I have some other examples there that would be kind of not human body related examples of positive feedback. Other questions that might come up, I do have videos and you watch them, and there's a true-false questions. For example, this true-false statement says that positive feedback loop causes self-amplifying cycle where physiological change leads to even greater change. So remember, positive feedback was very rare in the body. Most events in the body are negative feedback, which stop the change from happening. Positive feedback was only seen during childbirth, during lactation, and during the blood clotting or scab formation. So this statement about positive feedback is true, even though it is a rare occurrence. We're also seeing another anatomy, physiology, labeling activity. I won't go into too much detail on that in the interest of time, but you'll see again, anatomy is all about structures, parts that make up a structure, describing whether it's on a cellular or microscopic level or on a gross anatomy level, describing parts of something. Whereas physiology is how the processes work. We're seeing here examples of hormones, insulin and glucagon, how they regulate blood sugar levels. We're talking about sweating. So clearly that's a process, that's a physiology, that's how things act rather than anatomy. Exercise and milk formation would be examples of physiology as well. So I hope that those make sense. If not, they don't make sense yet. It will make sense once you work through the material from the textbook. I'll talk in my lecture videos a little bit about anatomical terms. Anatomical terms typically come from either Greek or Latin. So there might be questions like that. Again, study of body structures would be anatomy. As we see, I have different body systems that I'm asking you to identify. We're seeing digestive system, how to receive the food and process it. Integumentary system, which is one of the first systems that we'll have a look. So skin and associated structures such as hair, nails, glands. Endocrine system, so glands that produce hormones. Muscular system, the big muscles that move our body. Lymphatic system, you can think of lymphatic system almost like a drainage system, complementary system to cardiovascular system, and so on. So there might be questions like that. There also is a nice simplified diagram of how homeostasis work. So we have a receptor that notices that a change is happening. We process that information at the level of the brain, and then we act on that information. So that action could be either stopping the change from happening, like negative feedback, or accelerating that change happening, making it even greater, as in case in positive feedback, where we had those 3 examples: childbirth, lactation, and blood clotting or scab formation. Those were the only times when we saw positive feedback. So that should give you an idea what to expect on the quizzes. And I'm just quickly going to jump off from here and share my screen once more to give you an idea of what to expect in terms of the practice anatomy. And then I think that we're approaching the end of the time that we have scheduled for together. And let me just share my screen once more. Typically, practice anatomy is very picture-based. You're identifying structures, but since it's the first chapter, I have a little bit more verbal things. So, for example, in this activity, you would be completing the sentences by choosing the right term to complete the sentence. So anatomical position is something that you'll be learning about how human stands. We use anatomical position as a reference point, how we describe human body. You'll see how that can be described and what terms are important when it comes to that. We'll also see, for example, different planes, how we might cut human body to see inside. And these different planes, I'm asking you to identify what they are. So frontal plane divides the body into front and back. Another term that sometimes is used interchangeably with the frontal plane is coronal plane, like how you would put a crown. That's where your hands are. So front really gives you front and back, frontal plane. Sagittal plane divides you into left and right side. It can be mid-sagittal or it can be off from the midline, but it gives you right and left side, as you can see in that diagram. Transverse plane, or sometimes also referred interchangeably as a horizontal plane, divides into top part and bottom part. And again, it can move where we cut the transverse plane. It doesn't always have to be level of the abdomen. So that's the sort of questions that you will see. You'll notice that I have 16 questions for chapter 1, practice anatomy. I'm asking you to identify different body parts. And again, the textbook and my pre-recorded lectures go through these different areas of the body. Typically, they're related to bones or muscles that are on that area. So cephalic region, facial region, cervical region, sternal region at the chest, where sternal bone would be pectoral. There's your pec majors, where that region is. Umbilical, where your umbilical cord connected, so belly button. Abdominal, so where your abs would be. So there's going to be activities like that where you're getting to apply some of that terminology. Thoracic chest area, upper limb, lower limb. We're seeing abdominal area again, and pedal, so feet region. So that's the sort of things that you can expect to see. I have some more for the lower limb, inguinal, that's a kind of groin area. Patella is actually the kneecap, the bone, so patellar region refers to that. We're seeing femoral region, that's where the femur runs, bone that you'll be learning later on, and so on. So really use your textbooks to guide you. I have anterior, posterior views as well, scapular. So for example, your shoulder blade bone is known as a scapula, interscapular, the space between those. So your textbook and those videos do a good job guiding you through. We'll also see different cavities of the body. So brain is located within the cranial cavity. Vertebral canal contains the spinal cord. You also have your thoracic cavity, where you have heart, lungs, great vessels, diaphragm, the muscle sheet that separates the thoracic from abdominal cavity. Abdominal cavity contains a lot of the intestines, and you finally have pelvic cavity as well. So activities like that that give you a chance to kind of revise another view of these same things. Thoracic cavity can be divided into other subparts. Diaphragm was the muscle sheet that separated the thoracic from abdominal cavity, abdominal and pelvic cavity. So I try on this practice anatomy really get you to see the structures. I'm asking you, for example, what type of organs are located in each of the cavities. Again, your textbook, your notes will help you with that. There are a few questions that are not quite as vision based, so that will be lesser as we move on to the structures and systems where there's more to see. But there's, for example, a question about anatomical position, the correct statements that describe anatomical position. There's two of there, that the toes are facing towards the viewer and the subject is facing towards the viewer. Other ones are kind of incorrect there. Also asking about directional terms. Anterior at the front, posterior at the back, lateral on the side, medial at the midline, superficial at the surface, deep further in. So again, this is material that you will learn throughout the weekly material. Cranial cavity and vertebral canal contain the central nervous system. So examples of what could come up. Here's some directional terms. Again, I'm not expecting you to know these just from the top of your head. Doing these activities is part of the learning process. So anterior front, posterior back. Deep means far inside, whereas superficial means far close to the surface. Medial is close to the midline, lateral far away from the midline of the body. Proximal means close to the starting point, for example, of a limb, and distal would mean far away from the starting point of a limb, for example. We can use proximal and distal also for blood vessels and so on. Again, I'm asking what cavity would we see there? We're seeing the cranial cavity highlighted on that picture. So a little bit more visual ones. And again, there's body planes that you get to revise, and we're seeing that that's our transverse plane, also sometimes known as the horizontal plane. So that's what to expect in terms of the practical and quizzes. I think that that's a good start for us. Chapter 5 follows the exact same format. In the interest of time, I'm not going to go through that. I hope that this gave you a good idea. Do you have any questions at this point about anything in relation to this course? What to expect, what to see? I assume that silence is a good sign. So, like I said, I will be uploading this recording also on your Canvas, so you can use that to guide you. I will probably also look at the chapter 5 quizzes and practicals, kind of similar manner on tomorrow evening's review session. So if you really get stuck there, that video might help you a little bit. I'm glad that this has calmed you down. I know it's really intimidating, especially online classes. The material, since I release it all at once, might seem a lot, but I promise I've tried to make it very manageable. And I am not here as trying to catch you out. I really want you to succeed. If at some point things are not going your way, you just let me know. I will work with you. We will figure this out together. I don't use any curve in the grading, so everyone can get an A if everyone works really hard and gets good grades. I see on the chat that everyone seems rather happy with the material that we've covered. So this will wrap up our first weekly live online session. I appreciate you joining me. If you have a chance, I will offer these every week at the same time. We will probably go through a little bit more about some of the challenging questions of the quizzes and practicals and challenging points of the lecture material. But that's all I had planned. If you don't have any questions, I thank you. I hope you have a very good rest of the day. You do not have to join again tomorrow. There's no new material. We'll kind of cover the same material again. I'll make that as a recording. The plan is that we would meet every Wednesday from 1 to 2, and I offer the same material also every Thursday from 8 to 9. But you only have to attend to one, and you don't have to attend to even any of those. But it's going to be the repeat, the 2 sessions. I appreciate you so much. I hope you have a good day. Thank you. Bye. And this is the end of our recording. Like I said, I will make this recording available for you later on. If you have any questions, never hesitate to reach out to me. I will go through the same material also on Thursday evening. I'm here to help you to meet any goals that you have, so do not hesitate to reach out to me. I want you to get out of this class whatever you want to get out of this class. So I'm here to help you to succeed. With that said, thank you. It's been a pleasure to meet you so far.